Hello, I'm Stephen Childs of virtualvoicelessons.net, and I would like to welcome you to today's lesson entitled Increasing Your High Range, Part 1. Ever since the beginning of my career as a voice instructor, I've always had one question posed to me more than any other, and that is, can I learn to sing high notes? The answer that I emphatically give time and time again is absolutely, but you must understand the basics first. And that is why this lesson is so very exciting for me as your voice trainer, because all of your training thus far has been leading up to this moment. Understanding and developing your breathing, controlling your tone, recognizing and controlling glottal shock, and so on, are not only beneficial by themselves, but are also prerequisites to successfully increasing your higher range as well. You see, in order to achieve a higher vocal range, we cannot just exercise the voice in the same manner as we would exercise our bodies. In other words, we cannot just force the notes to come out by just going for it. I remember many years ago, I couldn't sing a particular note in a new song I was learning for the band I was in at the time. I'll never forget how one of the band members kept on insisting for me to just keep trying and push harder, even though I was starting to crack more and more, and I was starting to experience pain in my throat. The advice that he was giving me could not have been any worse, because not only did I never reach the note, but I almost damaged my voice to the point where even notes that were once easy now became a struggle. And it's amazing to me how many times I've heard this same type of story from students over the years. To sum up, there is no quick fix to achieving a higher range. And there's also not a certain training technique to develop our range as well. There are several different concepts and techniques that we must use together to reach this goal. Let me ask you this. Is a racing car fast just because of the engine under the hood? No, it's not just the engine, it's also the transmission, the rear, the type of fuel, the type of tires, and even the way it's driven that makes it fast. This is why as singers we must have all our parts working together as one unit in order to reach higher and higher notes that sound pleasing to the ear and are never in danger of causing vocal damage. And we must approach the technique of singing high from several different angles because, again, there are several different parts that allow us to reach those notes we are after. And notice the word that I just used, allow. That is the actual key to all of this. Singing high has more to do with allowing the voice to do what it wants to do more than, say, stretching or exercising the voice. Remember that we are all made from the same stuff. We all can greatly increase our vocal range and achieve the same high notes that we hear our favorite singers reach. It is not magic, nor is it just a gift to a select few. We all can sing high. So let's begin. Now I realize that I've used car analogies quite a bit in the past, and even used one already in today's lesson. But the similarities are often too close to ignore. So the one comparison I want to use now has to do with your larynx. Now the larynx is a very interesting structure that is commonly overlooked by the average person who does not sing or speak professionally. The larynx is where our vocal cords are housed inside of our throat, and it is for this reason that was given the name the voice box. Now, the protrusion outside of the throat is in fact the front plates of the larynx, which is what we often hear referred to as the Adam's apple. And just so you know, contrary to common belief, women do in fact have an Adam's apple as well, but is generally not as prominent as it is with males. So what does this structure actually do besides give us a home for our vocal cords? Well, believe it or not, the larynx behaves a lot like the transmission in a car. An automobile's transmission utilizes a form of leverage to take stress off the car's engine and transfers that energy across a series of gears set at a certain gear ratio. Now, although our larynx does not have gears, it does have all kinds of plates and attachment arms made up of cartilage that spin and slide, and ultimately stretches the vocal folds into different degrees of thickness and offset angles so as to achieve different musical pitches. In other words, the larynx is like a little machine. And just like the transmission in a car, this biological machine uses leverage to take stress off the engine in this sense being our vocal cords. Now, when we sing higher pitches, you may notice that the larynx itself raises. And not only does it raise upwards, but it actually tilts back a bit. This is one part of our voice that we can actually see functioning. Just look at an average guy when he's speaking, and you will see his voice box lift up and drop down according to the range of notes he is vocalizing. Now, when it comes to singing higher, the ability to allow the larynx to float up is one of the keys to successfully increasing our range. Now, the best way that I can explain how the larynx floats is by demonstrating it for you as I am singing. What I'm going to demonstrate for you is what it sounds like when we constrict the larynx as we're trying to sing higher. Remember, the higher we sing, the larynx wants to come up. And if we don't let it go up, we cannot hit high notes anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually physically hold my larynx, not allowing it to come up the way it wants to. I'll show you what it's going to sound like. You notice the second I let go of my larynx, I could hit the note. Let me demonstrate again. Okay, that's what it's all about, letting the larynx go. Now you can probably understand why correct inhaling is a prerequisite for increasing vocal range. After all, how can anyone allow their larynx to float when they're basically strangling themselves from a bad inhale? So again, this is why certain concepts and techniques need to be in place before we can even think about dramatically increasing our vocal range. You will have exercises that go along with this lesson as well as many others. And one of your main goals with these exercises is to develop the feeling of letting the larynx float upwards on higher notes. Remember, that's what it wants to do. It wants to float upwards. And you will know that you did it because the voice will jump up with very little effort, sometimes even higher than you actually wanted. And when it happens, you must take a mental snapshot of that feeling and apply it to both vocal exercises as well as any songs that you're trying to sing. You probably have noticed ever since you were a child that females generally sing higher and with greater ease than males do. This is even apparent within speech as well. But what isn't so obvious is that there are areas within the range of singing where the voice shifts from one set of muscles to another, which can cause a break in the vocal range. And this same type of occurrence also happens with a car's transmission as well. If you drive a stick shift or have at least driven with someone who drives a stick, then you probably visualize the point I'm about to make. As a car reaches a certain speed, we will hear the car's engine begin to strain a bit. And it is at this moment where we need to shift into a higher gear, which again transfers the energy into the transmissions of the car. You will hear the engine rev higher and higher. And as soon as you shift, it sounds like it now is running easier. This is surprisingly similar to the way our larynx behaves. When we reach a certain range of notes, the voice starts to feel like it's straining. Then, if we allow the larynx to shift upwards into its next gear, so to speak, we will feel less strain even though we are singing higher. Now, there are a few goal notes that we have for both our male and female singers that are applicable to almost everyone. The first note that we have is the note G. It is here where the larynx wants to do its first shift, and fortunately, it is pretty easy for almost all of us. But we do need to make sure that you go past this first break point with ease, and your vocal exercises thus far have been taking you through this important break point. Now, the second break point falls around the note B, which, just like the G, is above middle C. And we have seen a pattern over the years and through extensive documentation that this is also the most common belted high note in contemporary songs. It's funny how many times I'll be working with a student on a song and they are trying to hit a certain high note, and I will tell them to wait a second. I'll go over to the piano and hit the note B, and lo and behold, it was that very note. And the student looks at me with amazement, like as if I had perfect pitch to just know what note it is. But I do quickly tell them that it's just really a common high note. Now, it's up to this note that we should be able to use our natural voice. Now, by natural voice, I mean the voice that we use to speak with. There are actually 3 voices or registers that we can use. The first being the natural voice. Now, the second is our falsetto voice or head voice, as is often referred to in classical singing. And the third register is a combination of the first 2 registers, which we refer to as mezzo falso or half falsetto. The term falsetto is Italian for a false voice, and it is the type of voice that we often hear sopranos use when they sing. Now, in contemporary voice, we use falsetto far less than classical singers. Whenever classical singers vocalize anywhere above the note G, above middle C, they will more than likely be singing in their head voice, or what we refer to as falsetto. And for sopranos, this can be the length of an entire song. This is generally not the case with contemporary singers. When a contemporary singer vocalizes above the note B, they will often go into what is commonly referred to as their belt voice. The term that we like to use here at virtualvoicelessons.net is mezzo falso, or mixed voice. Now, this term mezzo falso is in actuality an operatic term, which I felt properly describes the belt voice. It is a mix of falsetto and the natural voice. Thus, the term mezzo, which means middle, and falso, again referring to falsetto. It is this voice that we go into past the note B, if we want the voice to still sound like it did before the B. That is not saying that contemporary singers don't go into falsetto above a B. It's just for a different purpose. It is generally used as an ornament rather than a means to sing high, as is done in classical voice. Whitney Houston, Christina Aguilera, Carrie Underwood, and so on are examples of contemporary singers who can belt out notes comfortably above a B, or may choose to go into their falsetto voice instead if they want a softer tonality. Again, for them, it is generally used as an ornament rather than the means to hit the high note. Now, both falsetto and mezzo falso will be covered in upcoming lessons, and it will be these lessons that will take you to your next level, which is the goal note E. Just like B is the most average high note in contemporary songs for both males and females, the note E is the most common impressive note that you will hear these diva-type singers use, such as Mariah Carey and Christina Aguilera and so on. It is this note that we sit back in amazement at how high and powerful that certain singer just sang. Again, that is not to say that the note D right under it or the note F above it is hardly used. They are. but it is the fact that this note is used more often than any other for very high, impressive singing. And it is the note that so many contemporary singers strive for. It is often the climactic note of many contemporary songs, as is found in Christina Aguilera's song, Reflection. In fact, this was even referred to as the note that made her career. One style singing that you may hear males sing this note is 80s heavy metal singers. Bands such as Judas Priest, Skid Row, TNT, and so on are great examples of male vocalists who are great belters. For me, this was the time period that I grew up in, and it was the style of singing that first impressed me. I couldn't believe there were these guys who could sing as high as girls, and one of my desires was to sing like them. I have a high range to this very day. And one thing along these lines that impressed me as a voice teacher is that even though females have an overall higher voice than males, our breakpoints are the same. Both males and females go into falsetto around the same notes, and the same is true for the belt voice. Now, females can sing falsetto higher than males, and males can sing in their natural voice lower than females. But again, the breakpoints are the same. It's as if the voice was tuned to sing the same, so that males and females can sing well together, and is again another reason the voice seems to be designed for singing. So let me summarize the different types of voices that we may use in contemporary voice. First, we have our natural voice, which should be able to go up to the note B above a middle C, and it can, if we allow the larynx to float up. We have falsetto, which is sort of a thinner sounding voice that starts around the note B, and it is the voice used by sopranos in classical singing as well as ornamentation in contemporary voice. Then we have the combination of the first two, which is mezzo falso, or as it's often called, the belt voice or mixed voice. This also starts around the note B, and it is the strong high singing we hear contemporary singers utilize. Both of these singing techniques will be covered in upcoming lessons. For now, what our goal is to be able to reach the note B, and the thinking behind that is to allow the larynx to float upwards. It is a feeling of letting go. And when we inhale correctly, burst the high notes instead of swelling into them, and release the larynx to do what it wants to do, this goal will be realized. Remember, we are all made up of the same stuff. We all can sing high as our favorite singers, and to do it in a way that sounds pleasing to the ear and will not strain our voices. I am Stephen J. Childs, and I would like to say thank you for listening, and God bless.